So he started off in a typically perverse Trumpian way with a typically deeply sick Trump statement. He actually said the words, and he was reading this from a teleprompter. We had transgender for everybody. So I guess that was what, Donald Trump's way of coming out as transgender, because everybody means the guy who's saying it. But that's the sentence that was put in the teleprompter for him by the deeply sick people who work in the White House who pumped that stuff into his teleprompter. He was talking about the state of the world as he found it when he became president. And he said, we had transgender for everybody. That was right at the beginning of his speech. This obsession that he has with transgender issues and transgender people. And suddenly, all 300 million people in America were suddenly in this demented man's hallucination, transgender. And then what? He got us all back to whatever gender he thinks we were before. He got to be... It is so deeply sick. Every single beat of this speech is deeply, deeply sick. A deeply sick delivery by a deeply sick person. He said this lie that everyone knows is a lie, written for him in the teleprompter. It wasn't an ad lib. He said, now we pay the lowest price for prescription drugs anywhere in the world. He put that lie, had that lie written into his teleprompter, and that's how he began his speech. And it began as what seemed like a State of the Union address. Halfway through the year, just a State of the Union address. These are all the wonderful things I've done with this presidency, including we won in Venezuela and we are winning big in Iran. That was there. That was right there in the beginning of his presentation tonight, which was really, as I told Jen, about simply getting to the point where he could make his pitch for this bill that is never going to pass the United States Senate. And Republican senators have said they will never pass the bill. And that's what he was out there doing tonight, talking repeatedly about what he called cheating and interference in our elections. And there is no American who has tried to cheat and interfere in our election in a bigger way than Donald Trump himself, who was indicted for it. He was indicted for his cheating and interference in Georgia. He was indicted for his cheating and interference in a federal indictment. That's who's up there giving this speech tonight about cheating and interference in our elections and talking about how foreign countries possess voter information, which by now everyone has already talked about, and as Jen covered in the last hour, is publicly available information. You don't have to hack anything to get that information. And it just goes on, talking about these documents, talking about a voter registration investigation in Michigan. We'll get Senator Slotkin's reaction to that, what he had to say about that. And it all came down to this moment of just trying to get to pass this bill of his that he wants to pass. And that's really what it was all about. It was an utterly ridiculous thing from start to finish. The networks who refused to cover it did exactly the right thing. And of course, they got their license, their broadcast licenses threatened tonight by Donald Trump for doing exactly the right thing in refusing to air his stream of madness. And so here we are. After Mitch McConnell issued a proof-of-life photograph earlier this week, Donald Trump delivered a proof of dementia video tonight, 25 minutes of it. Election dementia, anyway. At minimum, election dementia. Because Donald Trump's pathological lying and screaming outright insanity on this subject, year in and year out, has become so easily predictable. Careful clinicians studying this patient, Trump, like Georgia Senator Jon Ossoff, were able to tell us 9 hours before the event what was going to happen tonight.
Here's what's going to happen tonight. The world's most famous sore loser will deliver a primetime presidential sour grapes address to pursue his 6-year-old grievances about the 2020 election, while his war in the Middle East spirals out of control and the cost of living continues to rise for Americans across the country. I expect the president to reheat debunked conspiracy theories about the repeatedly litigated and audited and confirmed 2020 presidential election in Georgia, an election that Donald Trump lost. And let me be very clear about this. If the president declares Georgia's elections illegitimate, or if the president declares Georgia's sitting United States senators illegitimate, he is declaring Georgia voters illegitimate. It's Donald Trump who tried to defraud Georgia voters in that election. Donald Trump who tried to commit election fraud when he called Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, and it was caught on tape, and you should play the tape for your viewers today, and badgered and bullied Georgia's top election official to, quote, find him the votes that he needed to win in a state where he had lost.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
That is the sound of a crime in progress. Donald Trump was indicted for that phone call in the state of Georgia and in a federal indictment charging him with a conspiracy against the United States of America. Here's another part of that phone call.
You should want to have an accurate election, and you're a Republican.
We believe that we do have an accurate election.
Trump knew. Trump knew it was an accurate election. The Republican Secretary of State in Georgia told him it was an accurate election. The Republican governor of Georgia believed it was an accurate election and said so. Donald Trump's own campaign advisors told him it was an accurate election. And they testified to Jack Smith that they told him that it was an accurate election. They told, his own advisors told Donald Trump that he lost, and he knew it. But Donald Trump believes that his voters are the stupidest voters, not just in America, but in the world. And so Donald Trump has always believed that he can spend the rest of his life lying to his voters about anything. His lies have not been working for him this year. His lies about his war in Iran have not been working. His lies about his tariffs have not been working. His lies about the cost of living and affordability have not been working. And how much he has made it much worse. Voters know that. That is what has sunk him to new lows in the polls. And tonight, Donald Trump tried to go back to his big lie, his favorite lie, to climb out of the dark hole that he is in the polls. And so he defiled the White House once again tonight with a 25-minute demented exhibition of political pornography just to say this.
Congress must pass the Save America Act.